Hi, I'm Victoria, and I'm happy to have with me today Chris Osaka, the Chief Executive Officer for TOMU. TOMU is a modular dwelling manufacturer for leisure and hospitality, but it really is so much more. And Chris has taken some time out of his busy day to tell us a little bit about his company. Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for
Hi.
joining me on Listen Up Homebuyers.
Hi, thanks for having me. So TOMU is, like you said, a company that produces modular dwellings. We focus on leisure and hospitality, and by that, it's really for people that want to use them for vacation homes or rental homes, income-driving properties, all the way up to producing for investors or developers that are using this for pure hospitality purposes. So we got into this because we saw just a lot of things happening, both with the workplace changing, people wanting to get out of the city. And they were going into smaller towns, more rural areas and buying up properties. And we thought, if we can produce something that's more purpose built for that type of usage where it's part-time, but people really want to disconnect, but also have a nice place to work remotely, I think we can produce something that people will really enjoy.
Yeah. And tell me a little bit about how your dwellings are a little different. I found your website. I was really intrigued by just the design, the clean and simple look of it, and the fact that you create everything all in one. Talk about that just a little bit more.
Sure. So when we say for leisure and hospitality, what it really boils down to is how we utilize the square footage in the space. And I think if you look at the majority of the modular landscape out there, it's built for most likely single family homes. So the kitchens are kind of the focal point, the bedrooms, the bathrooms tend to be a little smaller. And when we say we do it for leisure and hospitality, our floor plans reflect that. And it's really what you would find in more of a upscale hotel. So the living spaces, the bathrooms are not only larger, but they have more amenities to them. Whereas where the kitchens are maybe more efficient. And it's not to say that they lack amenities. We really do put everything in them that somebody needs. It's just we put the space where people really want to use it when they're taking that downtime.
So, Chris, tell me a little bit about your background and how you came about with this concept.
Sure. So my background, I previously worked for Hilton, doing a lot of marketing and running their kind of digital brand marketing teams. Previous to that, I worked for Nike, where I was doing a lot of, amongst other things, but primarily retail development. So we would concept new store prototypes, but then we would roll those store prototypes out across malls in America. So there was really this attention to how do you create something not just for a single stand-up store, but really value engineer something high quality that you can do time and time again. And so that background really played a role in concepting the way we thought about TOMU. And I have two partners, Malcolm Johnson and Darius Kuzmitskas. Malcolm has had 40 plus years of construction experience across multiple areas, commercial and residential, but also similarly has a background in franchise construction, something that's very repeatable. And then also Darius, who is our chief design officer, his background is in architecture and specifically previously doing things in Las Vegas like the Wynn and the Bellagio, things that are really big box hospitality. So collectively, we have this experience, not just hospitality, but a mindset of how do we create something that's high value and kind of duplicatable.
Right. And really appeals to that consumer. So let's break it down a little bit. What are the products that you're actually offering to people?
So we offer three products. We call them villas. They're essentially a studio, a one bedroom, and a two bedroom villa. Each one kind of uses the components of the other to build upon it. And the style is a modern Scandinavian, Japanese, minimalist style aesthetic, but really something upscale. And we chose to do it that way because we see that we can provide more value in the quality and the finishes and fixtures that we put into these things when we create something that's standardized and we can produce them over and over again rather than taking an approach where everything is one off or everything is made to order. And so it's personally my style, but I think other people will really gravitate towards it.
So I noticed the beauty of it and the simplicity, and that is very appealing to me as well. And one of the things I kept thinking when I saw your design, actually all three of them, how well they would fit in nature, and how they would just sort of blend in. So with that kind of in mind, with the exterior, talk a little bit about what you're choosing on that exterior, and then, walk me through the inside as well.
So the exterior, we're doing a kind of a vertical wood cladding, and I think that's something that certainly takes a life when it's new and has a very rich kind of warm wood tone to it. But as it ages, that wood ages with its surroundings, so
Mhm.
it kind of grays out a little bit and really kind of disappears back into its environment. So we don't want these things to be just standing out in the middle of nowhere, drawing attention to itself. They should be high design, and we want them to be high design, but ultimately they shouldn't distract from its surroundings. And we pull that into the interior as well, where we say minimalist, but that shouldn't be confused with Spartan. It's a really rich, warm, wood paneled interior. A lot of neutral tones, but again, it's high amenity. So putting these things that you would find in a hotel, like rain showers or soaking tubs, but also just expansive windows and living space,
Mhm.
really kind of gives it a luxury feeling, but without kind of the clutter of maybe a traditional home.
Yeah. And tell me about the energy efficiency of these homes as well.
Yeah, so we built these to be both on grid or off grid. So they are high efficiency appliances, high efficiency windows, built to run off of. You could run them off municipal electric, municipal sewer, or you can do it off grid. We're really cognizant in what we put in there to make sure that we're not overloading the electric requirements, so that if you do want to do these off grid and have solar, that you can do so in a cost effective manner. And I think that's something that other providers may, or other vendors may advertise, but when you look at the specs and you look at the things that they're putting into them, the electrical load that they require, they might require off-grid utilities that at the end of the day are really unaffordable to
Mhm.
uh, actually build on site.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the part of it too that was really intriguing to me. The fact that you can make it so that people could plug in wherever they are. Do you offer any kind of assistance for people to connect with their local city and counties and that type of thing, so that they know, for example, where I live in the greater Washington, D.C. area, it would be a little tricky to kind of try to plug this in, although it would be considered an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit. So just walk me through that a little bit if you could.
Sure. Fourth, we are also located in the greater Washington area. So we have an understanding of all of the code requirements, or just city code around us. And we certainly want to help people within our area that we best can. We also are cognizant that we can't be the experts in every area. So in instances where they're outside of our immediate area, then we really work in partnership with their general contractor to provide them all the specification and needs of the units, because that general contractor is going to be the expert in what that local code is, so that very early on in the process, the buyer can decide, is this going to be a fit? And if so, then we can move forward. And if not, then they can find another option.
Mhm. I just when I called you to see if we could schedule our meeting, you said you were coming off of a project, and I was excited to hear what does that entail, especially in where we are in such a major city.
Sure. So the very first project is we've been working on our prototype slash model unit. So we are in the works trying to get that cleared to go out on a piece of land outside of the greater Washington area, so that people can actually tour this thing,
Oh, great.
both press and buyers, because we want people to know that this is a real thing. There are companies out there that they're doing everything off renderings, and we're in the very early stages too. So our website is renderings right now, but we consider ourselves pre-launch. And once we complete our model unit, we'll really go into full launch mode. But
Mhm.
we want people to not just see that we have built one of these things and that we have the capacity to do so, but that we've done the process from soup to nuts, and that we understand everything that can happen along the way, so that when we work with them and their general contractors in their area, that we're really kind of being cognizant of the things that come up and can proactively
Mhm.
work with them to
Yeah.
solve.
So that's going to be part two of our interview. When you get that up and running, I want to come out and do a little tour.
Part two we can do on site.
That sounds great. Now, tell me a little bit about the actual mechanics of it, the plumbing, the electricity. Talk to me about that wiring and the how all of that fits into the villa itself.
Sure. So the studio villa that we offer, which is our smallest one, is 480 square feet. It comes in 3 modules that are 8 by 20 feet apiece. So we went with smaller modules because knowing that people will put these in more remote areas, we wanted these things to be lightweight and more maneuverable, easier to crane, so that it really reduced the on-site requirements for setting these things. Certainly a lot of modular manufacturers go for bigger singular pieces, but that really impedes where we can put these in the roads that we can go down. And so to do that, we've really worked with our engineering teams and our design team to figure out how do these things kind of piece together where we can have conduits that essentially, once you set these on site, you're essentially putting them against each other and then connecting a few pipes and wires, because it's not just the electrical, it's also the plumbing for at least in the state of Maryland, things like fire suppression is required. And so it's not an easy thing trying to get these. So we really worked hard to simplify where these conduits go. So it's kind of a plug and play scenario for the on-site contractor putting these things together.
Okay.
Certainly we provide directions so they're not doing it blind. But we've tried to compress a lot of the more complex systems like the heavy electrical and plumbing of the kitchen and all of its utilities and the plumbing and all its fixtures in a singular module, so that you don't have to have those connections, and anything going to the other modules are really those ancillary things like just kind of the lighting or the fire suppression.
Okay. And so speaking again of the area that we live in Montgomery County, they've just cleared the ability to have accessory dwelling units. And what would you see, how would that work? If I asked you to come into my backyard, I want to do an ADU, walk me through that process, if you wouldn't mind.
So the process would start with selecting a general contractor. We are the manufacturer. We like to stick to being the manufacturer because that's our competency. And again, having people that general contractors know the area serves the buyer a lot better because they know the ins and outs and have relationships in doing so. So the process would start really once they have a site selected, which presuming they're doing an ADU, it's going to be their home. We would work in conjunction with the buyer to select a general contractor that they're comfortable with, but also we're comfortable with, that has experience doing these types of sets, because it is a very kind of specialized skill set that requires experience to do so. But the process would then start with providing the general contractor with all of our specs and the engineering, so that that general contractor can take it to the city to get cleared. We also work back with them where they provide us all the site specs so that our engineers can cross-check that and do a review to make sure that our engineering meets the requirements of the site that we're putting it on.
So in some respects, or I would say in all the ones that you've just kind of outlined, it really isn't that different from if somebody wanted to construct an accessory dwelling unit on their property, except now they don't have to worry about actually putting it all together.
No, it really isn't. They are working with the same people that they would. The only exception would be, instead of going through the design phase on their own or with an architect locally, that's something that's been outsourced to us, where that general contractor is essentially getting everything set up as they would on site, but then waiting for us just to deliver a package on their doorstep, so to speak, where they can then crane it onto the footings that they've prepared ahead of time.
Got it. Got it. And I was with a friend who was talking about she's going to be buying some land in New Hampshire, and I showed her your site, and she got very excited. And she said, "What about land where maybe I have to put in a well and put in a septic system?" These units are set up to work with that as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And specifically with our model unit, we're doing the exact same thing. We wanted to make sure we were going to the same rigors that our buyers were doing. So we're putting it on a site that has well, that has septic. So we're very familiar with the process that goes into anything that's not already supplied by the municipality. Where we come from on my background, certainly, but also coming from my hometown on the West Coast, there's a broader acceptance of modular that is relatively new to the East Coast. So we want to build awareness around what modular has become and how it's progressed over the recent years, and how it differentiates itself from maybe what people think when they think of modular, which might be more like manufactured housing.
Right.
Because it really has come a long way where you're really not sacrificing anything in terms of quality. And now really with what you're getting, it's of a even higher quality, because these things are being produced in environmentally controlled warehouses where your materials aren't getting rained on site. You're not having to wait for good weather to stand up walls or install things. Everything is built in an environment where the people working on them are comfortable. They're not freezing. They're not trying to rush through things. They're doing the exact same thing over and over again, so they're familiar with it. And it really has come a long way. And we want to build awareness around that, because ultimately that awareness needs to trickle down to the state and municipal level to allow for those sorts of zoning changes or code changes that that will allow for such a thing. And even when it comes to lenders and appraisers and knowing how to look at these things, that's tremendously important, because if a lender or an appraiser isn't familiar with it, they're not going to be comfortable lending on it. And these things shouldn't be any more difficult to construct than buying a standard home. And it shouldn't be that way if we really want to impact the overall issue that we have with the housing market right now.
Yeah. Was this something you came up with during the pandemic, looking at the different way that everyone how different we're living? Is that sort of where it started to happen for you?
Yeah, I think it was inspired by the pandemic. If for nothing else, I think we all had a lot more time on our hands to contemplate what we wanted to do with our lives. And there's certainly things that the pandemic accelerated, but I wouldn't say that what we're building is by any means dependent on the situation that we're in right now. Monetary policy and low interest rates certainly have an effect on people moving out of the cities or people buying second homes. But just more broadly, I think we saw an opportunity to build housing for this group of people that were looking for second homes or looking for investment properties, and providing them with a net new option rather than them going into rural communities or communities that are not accustomed to the volume of buyers coming in, and essentially them buying up houses and raising the prices on the market, and taking away inventory from people that would otherwise use it for their primary home. And you can see it when you take a step back at the market, but I think individually, when you're just a buyer wanting to get out of the city, it's kind of hard to see that impact that you have on communities. And by no means are we the ones kind of solving affordable housing in a broader sense, but we want to be an option for somebody that at least can help depressurize that impact.
Well, I certainly, as an exclusive buyer broker working with home buyers right now in this market, I appreciate the effort you're making. Our inventory is incredibly low, and the job is hard. And but no, I am really I'm really impressed by the product that you're working on, and I'm excited to do the video tour. As I said, part 2 of this Listen Up Homebuyer podcast will continue. Chris Osaka is the Chief Executive Officer for TOMU, a modular dwelling manufacturer for leisure and hospitality. Chris, thank you so much for joining me on Listen Up Homebuyers.
Thank you very much for having me.